Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the Workspot webinar. Well, we do this once a month. Mark Callahan, Aaron, myself. Make sure we invite all our, not only our customers, our prospects, industry experts and techs and so forth that want to come in and see exactly what Workspot is up to. Well, you can see from the title of our webinar, we're going to talk about today reducing VDI costs by up to 80% with a platform that unifies not only DAS and DEX, but also the enterprise browser. So that's the key. That's the theme to this webinar today. How do we do two things? How do we save the CFO money when they implement Workspot? But then how do we make sure at the same time we also make the end users happy, right? We don't want to compromise happiness or security or productivity by saving money, but we can do the same. We can do both things at the same time, and that's the key. So my name is Brad Peterson. I am the field CTO at Workspot. Been here for many moons. And joining me today to do the live demonstrations is Mark Callahan. Hey, Mark.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. Yeah, I am a solutions architect here at Workspot. Been here for 3 years and really appreciate everybody joining in today. Looking forward to a good session.
Excellent. All right, well, let's jump into it. We got a 30-minute webinar today, okay? So we're going to knock it all out in 30 minutes. Let's take a look at the agenda first. And by the way, feel free to ask questions along the way. We've got the chat window open so we can actually see that come in. And we appreciate your comments and questions and feedback for sure, okay? All right, and yes, we have some old friends. How you doing out there? Michael, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. Hey, look at our agenda. We got current EUC market. We're going to take a look at that, a lot of the challenges that are going on out there. And you guys are very familiar with a lot of this. We'll talk about it a bit. We're going to certainly focus in on the Workspot purpose-built platform. And again, like I said before, it unifies together not only the world of VDI and DAS and also DEX, yes, usability and observability, also the enterprise browser, which adds a whole new dimension and cost savings to the overall solution. And of course, the live demonstrations, as we mentioned before. Now, like I said, feel free to ask us questions along the way. And by the way, we're going to ask you questions too. In fact, I'm going to start off with that right now. First thing I'm going to do is ask you guys to fill in this poll here, which is what are you using today? Okay, now this is multiple choice. Windows applications, Windows desktops, Linux desktops, and by the way, this is in the world of VDI, right? Virtualizing, virtual Windows, virtual desktops. And also, are you publishing browsers with public web apps or SaaS or private web apps, okay? So you can click on all these things that makes sense to you. It gives us a feel for what's going on out there in the world. All right, we appreciate that. Okay, so that's wonderful. Thank you for filling that information in because today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about delivering Windows applications, Windows desktops, Linux desktops, and web applications, whether they're public or private. We're going to talk about how we deliver that today and optimize that delivery for sure. Okay, now I got one more question for you, and that is this. How are you deploying these today? If they're virtualized Windows apps or even browser-based experiences, are you deploying them in your data center, Colo, or in one of these clouds that we have offered you here today, Azure, GCP, and Amazon? And of course, could it be something beyond that also? And if it is, let us know also. All right, so this gives us a frame of reference as we go forward into the areas of interest today. We're going to cover all of these today. We just want to get a feeling for how you guys are using products today and really how you want to use them going forward. Okay, so let's do that. Let's jump right in. We're going to go ahead and start off with this image here, which is a little daunting. We talk to a lot of IT professionals out there in the world, and they are shaken to their core these days because of privatization of Citrix and VMware. So how many people are running vSphere, show of hands, like across the board? And a lot of folks are running Citrix as well, and they're doing that on top of vSphere. And now they're in a space where they really have to figure out what they're going to do. All right, if you're a big huge enterprise corporation, you sort of have a set of challenges there. And if you're a small to mid-sized company, a different set of challenges. So we see so many of these folks on Google going, alternative, to those technologies. And they're finding Workspot. So we get into conversations with folks all the time. I need an alternative to this and this and this. And it's typically, it's the vSphere and the Citrix that's on-prem. It could be other things as well. And this is how we get into conversations with them about alternatives out there. And of course, what their challenges are, okay? And so that leads us right into this, the challenges, the VDI storm that's happening out there. So Broadcom now is becoming very expensive, and this is why the folks are looking for alternatives. And it's similar in the Citrix world as well. So they have this huge stack over on the left-hand side that they've invested in for years, right? They've built out the infrastructure inside their data center and thrown the hypervisor on it, and then even dropped in the VDI brokerage mechanism on top of that. And it's taken a lot of time and expertise and cost, and now the whole thing is breaking open. And when they take a look at this and they say, hey, I need an alternative to this, well, they break it into pieces sometimes, and they find point solutions to take care of these sorts of things. So if you think about, the VDI world, you could start looking at a number of things. You could even look at DAS. You could say, I'm going to put this into the cloud, and you might find a number of vendors offering that. You might break off the financial part of it, the FinOps, the focus on trying to save yourself money, and go with another solution. And then the enterprise browser and so on, and even the user experience and observability, that could be another product as well. This is pretty common. These are the conversations we're getting into, folks. And so oftentimes they're not really quite aware that these point solutions actually represent our purpose-built platform. We have these capabilities inside, and that's what the webinar today is really focused on. The fact that we do offer these capabilities inside a purpose-built platform. And with that, we're going to share those with you and show you in a live demo. And then again, focus on making sure that you save tons of money during this transition and implementation, as well as your users are happy. Okay, that is for sure the idea. So with that, let's go and pop straight into the user experience. Okay, now if this is going to be a unified experience, the idea for the end user is they have a single Workspot client. And when they're in the Workspot client, they can actually click on any icon and they can access everything we talked about in that first poll. They could go off to a Windows application that's published and they consume it. They could go off to a Windows desktop, persistent, non-persistent. They could go to a Linux desktop and so on. They can also click an icon in this Workspot client, and in that they can go off to a public web application, a SaaS app, or a private web application, okay? Because within this unified workspace, the Workspot client, we have the ability to connect to a VDI backend as well as a browser-based experience. It's all baked in to that single user interface, okay? Now, kind of architecturally, kind of at a high level, this is what we're talking about. At the foundation level is the basics. It's like unified DAS and enterprise browser, as we talked about. So with this, we have Workspot control that allows you to control and configure this entire environment for provisioning and brokering and managing and so forth, and the Workspot client for consuming those. And remember, I said the Workspot client can consume VDI resources and browser because it has an enterprise browser built in, so it can consume web applications also. Now, we didn't stop there. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we built in this second layer. The second layer here is this unified DEX experience with FinOps and AI and machine learning. So 2 mechanisms and products we have offered here is Workspot Watch and Workspot Trends. So that's real-time analysis of everything that's happening in the entire stack, as well as Workspot Trends, which is trend analysis over time, looking at a year's worth of information and looking for trends and patterns, and also querying the end user from time to time to see what their sentiment is. Are they happy or not? And what is that? How does that correlate with activity and events that are happening within the system? So that's that whole stack of observability and DEX and FinOps and so on. Now, above this, we have these 2 areas of focus that I mentioned earlier, right? The area of the happy CFO. Well, CFOs, don't always know technically what's happening inside a system, don't even know whether the users are happy or not, or even if IT is happy or not, but they do care about the ultimate costs and oftentimes return on that cost as well. IT can justify the return, but what is the absolute cost? Well, we're going to talk about ways where you can save substantial amounts of investment over alternatives. Now, the alternatives we're talking about in many cases here is I have a full on-prem deployment and I have, built out CapEx, infrastructure and so forth. And when I do that, and I build it out to have just the right capacity for my peak load, well, that means that on-prem in my data center, more often than not, it actually is not being used that much. In fact, nights and weekends, it's completely idle. And even during parts of the days, it's a high percentage of it is idle also. So it kind of feels like a wasted expense. you get into the cloud and you do it right, you can actually have just in time and just enough, and you can save tons of money there. And yet your users are still happy. They're happy because when they click and ask for a resource, it's available to them within seconds, and they love it, and it's powerful, and it's just what they need. And when they do have a problem, if they do, you can fix it and remediate that thing as quick as possible, right? So save money, okay? Just in time, just enough, and yet happy users because, boy, that thing is there when I need it, and I'm productive, and I'm happy, and if there's a problem, it gets fixed quickly. That is the theme right here, all right? So let's focus in on that a bit. Now, as I mentioned over on the VDI cost model, when you're in a data center, on average, that investment you have might only be utilized about 12 to 18% of the time. Nights and weekends, nothing. Parts of the day, very little use, and so on. The problem is the fact that you have to build it out for peak load at any given time, so that you do and you can sustain that load at peak time. The peak is not very often, right? So what do we do? We come in here with a consumption model with DAS and with AI-driven DAS as well, and that's where we get into provisioning things right when you need them, just enough, just in time, and then taking it off the radar and out of your pocketbook, so you only pay for the things you need. So we're going to show you that in detail, not only in the upcoming slides, but in the actual demo also. You're going to see exactly how we do that. So 80%, yeah, that sounds like a lot. But when you compare that to the sort of the overconsumption that you have in the world of a data center, it becomes pretty amazing. Even when you compare it to going into a cloud yourself, a lot of folks that leave the data center to go into the cloud don't have a lot of cloud experience. And oftentimes they can get surprised by things, and they'll have some VM sprawl, and at the end of the month they get a big surprise bill of VMs that were running that they didn't realize were still running. You got to keep a handle on that. Well, Workspot's been doing this for so many years. We know exactly what's running and when it should and shouldn't be running. And if there's any rogue VM running, bam, real-time alarm, and it is brought to your attention so you can take it out. That's just the way it is. So we can save you a lot in the notion of VM virtualization in the cloud. Now, on the other side, on the right-hand side, we can also eliminate the notion of provisioning or publishing a browser to provide a web experience. Well, instead of that, use the enterprise browser, right? That's part of the Workspot client. It is a browser that's secured and made available to deliver those private and public web applications to your users with no VM infrastructure whatsoever. There is no VM running in that world, and yet it's massively secure and better than just handing URLs to your users to use on browsers, whether it's on company-owned equipment or even BYOC, okay? So what does that look like? If you take a look at this, inside the Workspot client running on this laptop here, you have two things, right? On the right-hand side, you have DAS or VDI, because you have a VDI client that's going to connect either on-prem or in the cloud to your VDI hosted Windows applications or Linux or Windows desktops. And on the left-hand side, you have your enterprise browser built in, ready to make a secure connection into either SaaS or private web apps. All right, so that's all packaged in one little thing and works there. You decide how you want to deploy those. We have customers that can grab the Workspot client and just use it as is, configured through our Workspot control cloud configuration mechanism to access SaaS apps and private apps. And there is no infrastructure whatsoever. There is no on-prem and there is no cloud infrastructure, because that's securing web applications. But it also marries into the VDI/DAS capability also, and you're going to see that in a live demo. Now, this is where the math comes through, okay? The math is how we save money. Now, take a look at the left-hand side over here. We got contact center, AEC, energy, and automotive. Just 4 different examples of configurations that various customers might use, okay? And the deployment choice too, is it non-persistent or persistent? Is it CPU or GPU and focused and intensive and so on? And then after that, it goes into a column of Workspot optimized just in time and just enough. So how many hours a day are they actually using it? It's crazy. With Workspot Watch and Trends, our customers are actually finding the real number of hours that each of their users are using the virtual machines and so forth, right? And the resources. And it's crazy because, you just sort of assume, you hand this stuff out and everyone uses it exactly 8 hours a day. But that's not the case. You have some power users that do that, and maybe even more. But a lot of folks are actually using it, 6 hours a day or 4 hours a day or even 1 hour a day if it's just a purpose-built application that they need on occasion, and then out they go. And so if that's truly the case and you start to look at the math, you can see 20 cents an hour, 75 cents an hour, 30 cents an hour, and so on and so on. And so, and by the way, and you get it down into the persistent on the two on the bottom there, I'll show you my mouse, you'll see the $8 a month. That's because it's persistent. So when I am not using it, I still need to like hibernate the memory in the storage and put that on a disk drive. And I pay $8 a month for that to sit there. And when I wake it up, it pulls that in the memory out and reestablishes my VM, and I'm running again. That's a persistent desktop. When you're doing it up in non-persistent space, you throw everything away. And when you're not using it, you're not paying for anything. In the world of persistent, you're paying 30 cents an hour when you're using it, and you're paying $8 a month to hold your state on the drive because it's persistent and you pull your state back. You get it? So that's a beautiful thing. It's great that in the modern day technology, you can actually pull this off and do that. But with those hours that we're estimating and we're actually monitoring these hours, we can tell you exactly what it'll cost to do hourly billing on your virtual machines and your resources. And you can see, even if I negotiated the best possible 3-year flat rate infrastructure service costs per user per month I could possibly do for these configurations, it turns out it's substantially better to go per hour and monitor and manage that to make sure that they're all ready to go when the user needs them, and when the user doesn't need them anymore, that they're actually broken down and there are no costs associated with that going forward. That is the idea right there, okay? Now, we're gonna run through this at a high level first as visuals, and then we're gonna go into the live demo, okay? So the first thing that I talked about earlier was just-in-time. So the notion of just-in-time is using Workspot control to set up your configurations, to have everything ready to go when you need it. Idle timeouts are set and so forth, and you can decide what to do when a person disconnects, and make sure you tune this up so that it's used, the VMs are used just when they're needed and they're not lying around after that, okay? Now, real-time alarms. So after the decision is made that a user is gone and things should be shut off, if VMs don't actually turn off, this is that crazy thing that you're gonna find at the end of the month. You're going to get a bill for VMs and you go, I shut them off, but they didn't actually die and they were still running and you were still being billed for it. So Workspot has real-time alarms to find those pesky VMs so that you can see them instantly and get rid of them and stop the billing, stop the pain, stop the bleeding, right? All right, now we also can go into here and model various things. So we can look at capacity used, but excess capacity provided. So if you look at these curves, you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So I got a week going on here, I got a weekend, and I got a week, and I got a weekend, okay? Now, the blue line is what is actually in use. That was being used that day. But on that day, for some reason, there was all this excess VMs that had spun up and didn't get used. So you can keep an eye on this. Now, if you take a look at this particular Thursday, well, what happened there? Well, that was actually back in Thanksgiving, right? And so, the model didn't really realize on Thanksgiving, no one was going to come into the office. So it was totally over provisioned. Now you can build that into the AI model so it doesn't happen again. But I thought, we just use that here as an example. Build the model on predictability, take a look at the excess capacity, and then tune the model so there's as little excess capacity as possible, and yet your responsiveness is as high as you can so that users get those VMs right when they need them. Okay, now we go into Workspot trends a little further, and we take a look at that predicting the model here. So you can take a look on the far green side, the right side, we have the current forecast. This is the forecast for next week. It's almost like the weather. We think it's going to rain on this day or be sunny on that day. This is the model we're projecting forward, and as the users consume over those days, we can see how accurate we were. We can look backward at accuracy, and we can use that to further tune the model going forward, okay? And then this one is really fun, and you're going to see this in the live demo, and this is the heat map, okay? So this is just enough provisioning. Throughout the day, you will measure, Saturday, Sunday, not a lot, okay? Monday through Friday, people are wandering into the office. During the middle part of the day, there is the heaviest consumption that's going on. In the afternoon, it might lighten up, and that is the heat map that you actually see here. So you can see the number of VMs that are in use and engaged and used by folks, not the excess, but those that are used. And the heat map is going to help you predict on an ongoing basis exactly what needs to be started and then certainly what needs to be stopped. And you can start to see who's coming in the morning at what time, and you can open up and launch VMs before they get there so that when they ask for it, they get it within seconds. All right, so that's the idea. Okay, so just in time, all the way through just enough, saving the CFO money, but launching fast enough to make the users happy. And speaking of users happy, that's what the DEX portion of the product is all about. So this is where we actually are proactive in our problem resolution. If we detect any issues anywhere, we can see this coming up, we can head it off at the pass, as it were. And when something does happen and occur and it impacts a user, minutes to resolve. But what you'll see in the upcoming demo is the notion of an alarm that fires, and when a user says, I have an issue, boom, we can open up a screen that tells you every single thing about that user and their device and the connection and everything from them all the way on the bottom left side, all the way through the gateway they're connecting through into the agent that's running on the VM and all the infrastructure that's in between. So telemetry is being captured every 30 seconds at every one of these points here and pushed up into our data lake in the cloud. And then we have real-time access and sort of machine learning and AI controlled automation over parsing through that data lake to make sure that we know exactly where the ramifications come in when there's an issue that happens. So problem resolution in shortest possible time, and then even being proactive in solving issues before end users experience it. And within the product, what we're doing is we're really taking a look at aggregating the solutions that do happen in the world. So when any customer of ours feels and senses some sort of problem and then actually resolves the problem and buttons it all up, that goes into an AI database, which can help other folks that experience the same problem. And from that, they can resolve their issue in short, kind of like a community AI capability within the system. There's so many common problems across all different platforms and all different devices and so forth that when you solve them, there's so much leverage that can take place if you do it right. And that is what we were all about there. So with that, now what we're going to do is we're going to go take a real-time live look at the demo, and Mark Callahan is going to share his screen. Hey, Mark, ready to take it away?
I sure am. Thanks, Brad. All right, so this is Workspot Watch. So this is the real-time monitoring and observability dashboard that Brad talked about. And we can see here under the alarm section that I have a real-time view of what's happening across my entire Workspot estate. So I can see, whether it's on-prem or in one of the clouds, in real time what's happening. And I can even, look at specific areas to say, hey, just show me gateway issues, just show me desktop issues. So that way, as I look at my my environment, I can very quickly see, where are these problems? They're kind of bubbled right up to the top. And then from a user perspective, I can come in and I can look at, a user maybe who's called into the service desk saying, hey, I'm having some problems. I can very quickly look at, what are they entitled to? What should they be able to access? Where are they coming from? How long did it take for them to log in? All of their trace data and log data is available to me as the support person. I don't have to ask the user to send those or go find those logs and get them to me. I can see where they're coming from. Are they coming in from Wi-Fi? Are they plugged in? I can see, what are some of the different metrics related to their session, their round trip time, their memory, their latency, their bandwidth, all those things, so that I have a very clear, concise picture of what's happening with this user, so I can very quickly troubleshoot what's happening with them, get them back on up and running. So that's Workspot Watch, real time, what's happening now. Workspot Trends, this is more of a historical look, so I can see things like excess usage that Brad mentioned. So, what is happening, and using, predictive AI to say, hey, in the last couple of weeks, this was the trend that your users use. This is when their machines were most used. I can, look at a heat map that's going to help me, very quickly hone in on those times where machine usage is very high or machine usage is very low, and that'll help me make sure that I, provision those machines just in time with just enough for those users, so that when a user needs a resource, it's available to them, but it's not running when they're not, and you're not, incurring those cloud costs as well. So lots of information in Workspot Trends. You can look at, sizing, what machines are, maybe oversized for users, so they have more resources than they need, what resources maybe are underutilized. Maybe you need to, give them some more memory, give them some more RAM. What's the user login experience look like? How long did it take for them to log in? And even feedback from users based on, surveys saying, hey, everything's great, or I'm having a problem here. I can correlate that feedback from the users with specific information about their VDI app or desktop to try and determine what exactly is happening, try and get to the root of that problem. So watching trends, real powerful tools, using AI with the goal of keeping those users happy, helping the IT team quickly identify and resolve problems.
Well done. All right. Quick and concise. I love it. Okay, let's pop back to the screen over here. Thanks for the live demo. I think that gives folks a feel for what it looks like, the feels like, the real-time value add that comes in there. Thanks, Mark. And you know what? We'll end up here on a screen where we have even more value for you guys. So we have set up calc.workspot.com. So these are cloud cost calculators. Okay, you can see one for Azure, AWS, and GCP. Pretty easy to get to, just calc.workspot.com. Head over there. If you want to pop in and take a look at putting in parameters that you have, a number of VMs, sizes, and various things like this, and it'll kick it all out and give you guys recommendations on sort of best practices in deciding what infrastructure is best for you and what costs are real. It really helps you a lot with that. So we want to make sure when we do this that we factor in the just in time and just enough, that you have the true hours that folks will consume it, and then you bill hourly, and you're going to see some good numbers there. The other thing is we have a white paper that we just completed, which is the DAS costs, focused on that in the myth and reality. So it goes into that chart we talked about earlier, really takes a look in depth at the hourly costs and the typical hours used for a typical configuration on a typical cloud. And there's a lot going on there. Feel free to go to that link and grab this. And by the way, I can send you, quite a bit more. Let me just finish off with a poll here, asking you guys, well, first, thanking you for joining us for the webinar today. And then just let us know the best way to get back to you. Do you want me to send you, more content? Do you want a follow-up meeting, so we can do this one-on-one with you and go into great detail? It's interesting, when we work with our customers, oftentimes, they themselves might not go deep enough into Workspot Watch and trends, and we haul them through there and show them insight into their organization they wouldn't believe. And so some of those anecdotes that we get tons of value with, we can share with you guys also. So let us know. Do you want a recording? Do you, yes, you want follow-ups? Yeah, I can see you guys clicking on all those, so you know what that is. So excellent. So thanks for that. And I appreciate everybody's time. We do this at least once a month, if not more. As we do the upcoming ones, we'll send you guys the invites and hope you guys can join us again for sure. If you have any other questions beyond this, you guys can always reply to me, brad@workspot.com. Super easy to do, and I can follow up with you guys directly, and happy to do so. Okay, so we know you guys are in a challenging environment, a challenging world out there. If you guys are looking for alternatives to yesteryear, then certainly contact us. We, with most of our prospects, we jump on a call with them right away, sort of vet out the scenario and get a little pilot going, because it's pretty darn easy to do for us. All right, so let us know how that sounds to you. Thank you guys for coming again, and thank you, Mark, for the demos.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate everybody's time today. Thanks.
All right, take care, everyone. We will see you all again soon. Have a happy rest of the Wednesday, rest of the week. Take care. Bye-bye.